committee. So we are kind of short for videos this week because this episode didn't really give us that much, but that's okay because I've had something that I've kind of wanted to talk about for a while. So if you guys remember the Wizard of Oz Generations theory, we kind of did that, but this is a different one, sort of in the same vein though. Instead of being Wizard of Oz though, is instead the Team Stark Generations theory, as I will call it. And so I was talking about this with Al, and if you guys don't know, Al has been in some of our videos before. He did a bunch of videos about Crow because that is all he wants in this world. He does not care about anything else in the show except for Crow. And so, but I have Hunter here with me. I don't think Hunter talked at all in the last video we recorded. He is sick.
Yes, and yet I'm still here for
I know.
some fucking reason.
I love you. It's okay. It's okay. So anyway, I was talking about this with Al, so I'll just start kind of, I don't want to say reading our conversation because that's kind of weird, but I'll basically read what I said. And so I said, that, hold on, I lost it. Basically, this is a theory about how each member of Team RWBY reflects in Team Stark, and that's why they were sort of picked first, if that makes sense. Because if you think about it, Ironwood and the other headmasters are part of the Wizard of Oz gang. That would be Jean, you know, Jean, Ren, Ruby, and, Nora. They are all part of the Wizard of Oz gang of things. We talked about that in the Wizard of Oz Generations theory. But separate from the Wizard of Oz gang, quote-unquote, that is the headmasters, you also have the Stark, group. You know what I mean? And so Team Stark was also important, because you have, again, you have the headmasters who rule the schools for Ozpin, but then you also have Team Stark, who was very important, it seems, to Ozpin at least a generation ago when they were around. And so there is some intersection. Obviously, RWBY is a part of the Wizard of Oz gang, and the, normal one, I guess, and the Stark gang, because in here she sort of represents Summer, and I'll start to get to that later, but that's because Summer was also sort of part of the Wizard of Oz gang. You could include Crow in the Wizard of Oz people too, because he is obviously based on the Scarecrow, but the thing is he's not a headmaster, and so it's a little bit different than the Wizard of Oz Generations theory we talked about before, just because I think that when we see the headmaster of Vacuo, like, obviously, he's based off the Scarecrow, but I think they made a little bit of a mistake. Like, I feel like Crow should have been the Vacuo headmaster, personally, unless they do something different with her character, just because it would have made sense. Like, all of the Wizard of Oz people are now, like, ruling the schools, sort of thing. Like, Galinda, and Ozpin, and Ironwood, and Lionheart, you know? It just, it would have been a cleaner integration, so to speak, because, like, you have basically the three characters from Wizard of Oz, like Ironwood, Lionheart, and then the Scarecrow that came with Dorothy, all ruling the other schools that aren't Vale, right? And that would have narratively made more sense, but I'm sure that they had some kind of plan, because to explicitly be like, no, he's just a teacher at Shade, guys, like, don't worry. Like, I'm sure that they have some sort of plan for that. But anyways, more on the actual Stark theory. So basically, what we were talking about is that Weiss, I believe, is more likely to kind of question things than Yang, even though in this episode we do see Yang kind of stand up to Ozpin and be like, no more lies. But now that she said that and Ozpin agrees, maybe she won't, like, like, Ozpin promised us not to lie anymore, and then Weiss will be like, well, what if that doesn't matter? You know what I mean? So this is basically the idea. Is that Weiss already seemed like that she wanted to stay with Raven and some of the stuff, and, like, here's basically kind of what we talked about, right, in terms of the other characters. So RWBY has the silver eyes, obviously. She's basically a carbon copy of her mom. So if we're gonna talk about the Stark generation, she's basically Summer. Like, she is the shoo-in for Summer. As for Yang, Tai shut down emotionally when Summer died. Yang does that same emotional shutdown. I think it's easy to kind of put Yang in Tai Yang's place. That, if we're talking about the next generation, Yang is Tai Yang in this situation. And we can also see that reflected in Blake, because Blake sort of, I guess, serves... People like to say that she serves as Raven, but I feel like that's kind of like shipping material. You know what I mean? I think that in this sort of instance, she serves more as Crow, if that makes sense. And so I'll get to that in a second, but we see this sort of weird relationship between, like, Crow and Ty now that's obviously strained, but the reason why I say that Blake fits into Crow's position in the Stark generation is because Crow is sort of literally running away, or keeping people away from him, because he's afraid that they'll hurt him, like, literally, but with Blake it's all in her head, but she's doing the same thing. You understand what I mean, Hunter? That Crow is pushing people out of his life because he's afraid that they'll get hurt because of his semblance, but meanwhile, Blake does the exact same thing, but it's not necessarily because of her semblance, it's all in her mind. And to an extent, their semblances reflect that, because Blake's semblance is always to run away from people, whereas Crow's is bad luck, right? And so even though it's not a, like, literal, like, I'll give everybody bad luck around me for Blake, it's more like that she is somebody who runs away, so to speak, and that sort of fits in with Crow in terms of the generation thing. And so that leaves either Weiss or Yang to be Ty, Yang, and Raven, because we've already eliminated Summer and Crow on either side. You know what I mean? And so Yang fits into Ty because, like, I feel like, you know, she's loyal in that she shut down emotionally like Ty, and if RWBY is Summer Rose, something that happened in this episode was Yang said that she'd stick with RWBY, because RWBY always sort of knows what to do. We can compare that to Ty sticking, with Summer in some capacity, depending on what happened after the falling out with Raven, you know what I mean? And so, in that sense, I feel like that is where the connection is. And so, and obviously, Ty's Yang's father, so that's the easiest one. Like, the kids are the easiest one to kind of plop down into place, so to speak. Hunter's nodding because he can't talk, so he's like, yeah, Cal, yeah. And so that leaves Weiss left as Raven. And so I feel like there may be some conflicting, like, reports with that, but here's why I say that she's Raven. It's because she's already pretty skeptical. It seemed like she wanted to stay with Raven more. She seems the most likely out of the group to ditch, if that makes sense. Because Weiss is somebody that goes after the truth in some respects, right? Like, she wanted, you know, I don't want to say she wanted the truth about her father, because I feel like she already got that, but she wasn't playing any games with Jock. She knows to be, like, skeptical of people to an extent, because she was skeptical of Whitley, even though he's her brother, because she knew he had sort of underlying poor intentions, and she did the same thing, you know, obviously, Jacques has given no reason to be trusted whatsoever, and so she does the same thing. Now, here's sort of where the difference is that Weiss is the first one to stand up for Yang and say that if Yang says that Mercury hit first, I believe her, right? And so Yang is supportive of her teammates, but when it comes to, I guess, the adults that may hurt her teammates, I don't want to say Mercury's an adult, that's where Weiss gets skeptical. And so where Weiss may defend Yang and RWBY, she may see that Ozpin she doesn't equate Ozpin as the same as him, and I feel like this fits in because Weiss is so willing to trust her teammates, she may fall into a same category as Raven, where in the future, you could say, Weiss is trying to tell Yang, or RWBY, or Blake, if Blake ever comes back, I don't know, you know, they try to tell them that Ozpin has done something because Weiss wants to protect the rest of the team, but the team ignores her. The team doesn't believe her, right? Because we get that vibe of that's happened to Raven. So basically, like, the gist of this theory is history repeating itself, and Weiss being like, well, I'll just have to prove it to you, you know what I mean? Like, Weiss sort of having this resolve, like, I've always believed in you guys, like, why can't you guys believe in me, you know, in this moment sort of thing. I feel like Weiss is the most likely of them to find some shit out about Ozpin and then be like, oh no, you know what I mean? Whereas Yang obviously was like, no more lies, but I feel like that reflects in Ty, right? Because after Raven left, Ty obviously, you know, I think Ty still kind of kept his allegiance to Ozpin and everything because he got with Summer, right? And so if he really thought Ozpin was a shithead, he would have either left with Raven with Yang, or he wouldn't have got with Summer after that. He would have just kind of wanted to be alone, so to speak. That's how I think of it anyway. And so I feel like that it's sort of the same thing, is that Yang is like, no more lies, Ozpin. Like, Tai was like, no more lies, Ozpin tells the truth. And then Ozpin was like, okay, and then his wife died. And so that's where things get, yeah, Hunter's like, yeah. And so that's where things get a little complicated, I would say, is that I feel like, again, this is history repeating itself. Tai trusted Ozpin one last time, and what does Ozpin do? Summer is dead. We don't know for sure if that was Ozpin or not, but, like, let's be real, guys. Fuck, we know. Like, we know that's how she died. Let's not try to beat around the bush. You know, we know Ozpin's not that innocent, you know what I'm saying? And so I feel like that's also, again, another reflection, is that Weiss finally kind of, I don't want to say leaves again, but she goes off to try to find some sort of proof to tell the team. Yang has already said in this episode, no more lies, Ozpin. You know, Weiss is gone. RWBY, I don't think RWBY would die, but RWBY or somebody else gets hurt. And then Yang's like, well, shit, I guess I should have listened to Raven in Tai's case. I guess I should have listened, you know what I mean? And so we kind of see, like, that in Tai's bitter interaction with Crow. And, like, I don't think Blake would be loyal to Ozpin. That's the only place where I get sort of, like, I don't want to say sticky with this one, but it's that, again, it's supposed to just be generational similarities, not necessarily the same. But at the same time, Blake could doubt Weiss because they haven't had the same development together that Weiss and Yang have had, right? Like, when Blake comes back, she's gonna miss a whole season of being developed around the other girls, so she may still think of Weiss as the bitch or something like that. You understand what I mean? And so I feel like it won't be exactly like that, but I feel like Blake maybe won't be necessarily as like, oh yes, Weiss, like, that sounds right, maybe we shouldn't trust Ozpin, because, like, I feel like to Blake, or, you know, Ozpin, when he talked to her about, like, you know, being a faunist and all that stuff, they had sort of, I don't want to say an intimate conversation, because that sounds weird, but Blake would have no reason to trust Ozpin. She's been gone for so long, so she would still, I suppose, stay loyal, and that's kind of where her similarity with Crow comes in. But this is basically, I think that Weiss is sort of the Raven substitute. For now, this could change in the future. I feel like, depending on what happens, we could definitely switch Yang and Weiss at a later date, and that Yang would be the shoe-in for Raven, I suppose. But I feel like this is the strongest one for now for a Stark generation theory. And so, like, we talked about this before, but there's a reason why, you know, Ozpin gave Team RWBY special attention. It's the same reason as he gave Team Stark, and so we had to see sort of similar attributes that Team Stark had because, you know, they were both picked. There had to be some sort of intersection, and I feel like this is it. So, Hunter, you've been very quiet throughout all this. I know you're sick, but if you could, like, ASMR your thoughts into the microphone, what do you like to get nice and close, Hunter?
They're gonna catch it.
They're gonna catch. So what do you think? Because you've been nodding along, but I'm like, what are you really thinking?
Nodding's oftentimes a substitute for, like, I'm in pain, I can't hear anything. I like the idea almost, you said before that, like, I guess Weiss is Raven. I think Blake works as Raven quite well, just the idea of running away. Like, we don't exactly know.
I feel like Crow's not a runner, though. I mean, like.
I mean, as Raven.
Oh, well, I that's the thing. That's where I kind of get, like. And that's where I kind of get testy, I guess, with this, is that, like, Crow isn't a runner, like, not necessarily, but I guess, like, after Summer died, he could have became a recluse old man, you know what I mean? But it was more of the semblance comparison, you know what I mean? That, like, they both push people away. Raven didn't necessarily do that, she just left and fucked off, you know what I mean? But yeah, I do agree, I think that's why most people, like, put Blake in that spot, but I think she fits much more with Crow, because with Blake, it's not about running away, it's running away so people don't get hurt, right? That's not why Raven did it, as far as we know. Good, yeah. And so, it's more about the semblance lends itself to protecting others, if that makes sense. And so, yeah.
I was about to be like, well, we don't know enough about that, but that was the same logic that brought to the Ozpin isn't the wizard argument, which, where did that get me? So.
I know, exactly. And so, anyway, I don't know. I like this idea because I made it. That's kind of where we get with everything. We'll see if it comes true. You know, this would also be, like, some freezer burn material, because people would be like, wait, if Yang is Tai and Weiss is Raven. You bet people already do that when we say Blake is Raven, you know, in this instance. You understand what I mean? Yeah. Like, no matter what way we go, somebody's gonna be like, there's a ship to be had, you know, so I don't care. It does not matter. So anyway, guys, I hope that you enjoyed this one. I don't have anything else to really say on it. We've been kind of, I don't want to say that we've been stuck for videos this week, but like there wasn't a lot to talk about, so I wanted to get some of my own ideas out there in the world. It's been a while since I've been like, hey Hunter, I have an idea. You know what I mean? Except like, I guess last week I had one too, but it feels like for a lot of the hiatus, I was just like, what's on the RWBY amino this week that I can steal? I mean, look at, you know, so I hope that you guys enjoyed this. If you did, remember to check out my Discord server and become a patron over on Patreon, and we will see you later. Bye-bye.